Greta von Gerbil and her really large lexicon. Words by Blair Reeve. Pictures by Chris Stapp. The superlative verbalist Greta von Gerbil took pleasure in garments of violet and purple, and loved to read books to her crab and her turtle. When she came to a word that was novel or new, she would write down its meaning for later review, and that's how her lexicon blossomed and grew. Now generally gerbils are known to be chatty, without being scurrilous, pompous or catty, but a natter with Greta drove everyone batty. When she strode around Rodentville's hard-bitten streets, she would fasten her step to a sure-footed beat, then she'd stop and she'd talk to whomever she'd meet. And here's what she'd do. She'd begin with a greeting, then say, "How auspicious for me to be meeting a maven like you, sir, no matter how fleeting." She'd tell you that heliotrope was her hue. "'Tis a shade so perfervid it never turns blue, whether worn on the dome or the vamp of one's shoe. And I'd like you to know, sir, I'm fond of crustaceans. Chelonians, too, self-possessed in their casings. They're sedulous listeners with caches of patience. I find them instructive, these creatures of grace, who locomote slowly, immune to the haste that hampers the nous of our scampering race. And how about you, sir? What solace assuages your years of careering through mazes and cages for scraps in the peanuts of granular wages?" But folks would stare through her, not sure what to say. They'd ponder her words for the rest of the day, then weigh them to work out which way they would sway. The rats, for example, thought Greta's intentions were most insincere, that her words were inventions, and manner of speaking absurd and pretentious. The chinchillas chimed in. "It's very uncool to be jived by a gerbil who speaks like a fool. Did they not teach her nothing in finishing school?" Even the beavers misunderstood Greta. "She likes to show off and to think herself better than folks who prefer their words modest of letter." The groundhogs agreed. "She treats us like clowns. She tricks us and trumps us with counterfeit nouns. Do we really want posers like that in our towns?" A few cheerless chipmunks then joined in the chorus. "The gerbil loves nothing more drear than to bore us with words from that doorstop she calls a thesaurus. We've got to take action, by tooth or by crook. We'll put the kibosh on her gobbledygook if it means that we have to demolish that book." So later, while Greta was grocery shopping, those cheeky intruders went sneakily hopping all over her bookshelf in search of that whopping great volume of words they intended to steal. When they found it, they yelled, with a mouthful of zeal, "Let's gnaw this thesaurus to coarsely ground meal!" Back at the gathering, Seamus McHamster, Rodentville's slickest and slimiest gangster, rejected their plan with one even more rancid. "So she likes to wield words. Well, we'll do the same. We'll use her thesaurus to sharpen our aim. We'll beat that wee rat at her very own game. Let's find us some words that are rare and perplexing to use in a sentence so mentally vexing that even a gerbil who relishes flexing her lexical muscles would stammer and stall. When she's standing there stuck with her back to the wall, we'll mock her pretensions and make her feel small." Back in her kitchenette, nibbling on feta, young Greta sat calmly composing a letter, and quite unaware of this petty vendetta her fellow rodentia were planning to run. "Dear Headmistress Marmot," she'd only begun, "it concerns me how folksy, homespun?" But she paused to reflect. "Am I being too tactful? I need to use words more direct and impactful without sounding terse or yet worse, disrespectful. I'll try my thesaurus." She rummaged around her tiny abode, but it would not be found, and Greta, frustrated, sat down with a frown. By the time she took heart and returned to her writing, the mob had moved on from their bitter backbiting and found themselves nervously fussing and fighting about who among them should test Greta first. So Seamus McHamster took charge and coerced his stooges to choose a few words and rehearse. Then prison escape artist Sophie O'Gopher, who Seamus employed as his personal chauffeur, and guinea pig Digby, a docile loafer who'd let Seamus use him for any old test, were given a day at their boss's behest to learn the new words off by heart and digest. The following morning, those two wretched rodents returned to the street to await their opponent. They paced back and forth as they took a few moments to practice their lines on the ignorant crowd. They'd actually prepared. They did themselves proud. And the mob and McHamster were mightily wowed. Meanwhile, Greta was choosing a sweater to wear when she went out to mail her letter. The morning was chilly, so woolen was better than waterproof nylon or synthetic fleece. She ironed some trousers to press out a crease, then finished her breakfast of parmesan cheese. It was just on 11 when Greta came strolling along to the corner of Burrow and Holing. At the dong of the bell of the clock tower tolling, she turned and walked on toward Nuthorder Square. But the chipmunks were scouting, that mischievous pair, and they whistled the signal that Greta was near. As the crowd grew expectant, the mood became heady. They pushed Digby forward. He was shaky, unsteady, but Seamus chastised him.
"Stand firm, kid, get ready!"
So Digby braced up.
"Yo, Miss Greta, how fat are those Byzantine pantaloons swathing your prat? What broker hawks knickers as kicky as that?"
Greta stopped walking. She looked at her trousers.
"These slacks you refer to were purchased from Mouse's Couturier Plaza of fashion warehouses. The shade is Fandango, more thistle and spice than Byzantine violet, which isn't as nice and looks a bit sheeshy on gerbils and mice."
Digby looked helpless. His confidence crumbled. Instead of responding, he dithered and mumbled some do about da, and the audience grumbled.
"She's made him look stupid. He wasn't prepared to engage with her further, and then he got scared. Let's send in the gopher."
Then Sophie appeared. Now Sophie O'Gopher was one of the meanest of Rodentville's rabble, and therefore the keenest to punish wee Greta with something more fiendish. In the background, McHamster explained to the mob,
"She may have stumped guinea pig thingamabob, but my chauffeur will show her. She'll finish the job."
"Ho, Greta," called Sophie. "We've all been appraising the way you perambulate Rodentville blazing the guns of your circumlocutory phrasing. You bloviate blarney, you flaunt poppycock, you're a flibbity gibbet in lavender schlock, and you fashion yourself as a quarry of mock." How funny, thought Greta. The gopher has spoken like some kind of jester intent on provoking a public reaction with practical joking. It seems she must want me to say something snide, but this gopher is full of such sensitive pride that I think it more prudent to get her on side.
So Greta replied,
"Oh, my dear, what a pleasure to hear you wax prolix in musical measure. What harlequin humour! What lyrical treasure! Your tongue is a brush and your lexicon paint. I really hope, Sophie, you plan to acquaint us with more of your sesquipedalian feint."
Well, how about that? It was quite unexpected. That Sophie felt gratified, even respected, for Greta's response had profoundly affected her pride with those flashes of passionate praise.
"Why, thank you for setting my talent ablaze,"
said Sophie, who bowed, and the crowd were amazed. A group of old groundhogs, 2 voles and a beaver, declared that their village of rodents had never seen anything quite so amusing and clever as Greta enchanting that gopherish clown. So they yelled,
"Hey, McHamster, Let's give her a crown. She defeated your stooges. She beat 'em hands down.
This only made Seamus more coldly ambitious. He hated to lose. It could turn him malicious, then jealous and cunning and very suspicious.
The Gerbil's too artful. Her speech is a scam. There must be a way I can beat that wee sham.
And he started to dream up a dastardly plan.
If no one knows which of her phrases are phony, then how can they tell when she's talking baloney?
He thought for a second, and that's when his stony expression transformed to a devious grin, for Seamus had thought of a way he could win.
I'll make up my own words. I will be crowned king. Oh, Greta,
called Seamus,
I've heard how you stumbus from Tragfolly Slippard to Lipper nor Lungus without getting crasms or jong on your tungus. But you must know that rodents think squiff about glots, and the kirkaroo yidnas of schnackers and flots. So explain first, please, why do you trub schnots?
Then he turned to the crowd with a smugly expression and told them,
I bet she can't answer my question. It's too intellectual. Let's hear her confession.
He looked back at Greta, his face full of spite, and the rodents did wonder if Seamus was right, for his speech really had sounded brainy and bright. As the crowd grew quiet, everyone waited. A pair of chinchillas took bets and debated on whether Von Gerbil was more educated than Gangster McHamster, that villainous lout. But far from a picture of panic and doubt, wee Greta had Seamus's speech figured out. That hamster, thought Greta, sounds wonderfully zany, though clearly the gist of his question is mainly directed at me and my taste for ungainly expressions that tickle and tackle the mind. He's led by example, and so I'm inclined to address his request by replying in kind. So Greta responded, I trub schnots for foggle, because the ignortious are crupt and boondoggle, and snowbosy slidewise pugrexley hornswoggle. If rodents contrivalry spucumfurate, and Paul fastery clumpsters can stomp on a mate, then perdunce you not petching your spare to my state. Now though it might seem like a flurry of nonsense, her speech, for McHamster, was privately monstrous, for Greta had broadcast the truth of his conscience with so much vehemence and snout in her vent, he couldn't deny that he knew what she meant, and that what she had meant had been honed with intent. And the force of her wisdom and tonal conviction, an accurate fusion of unusual diction with such a blunt view of his general affliction, left Seamus confounded, absorbed in a pause, just scratching his noggin with one of his claws, as the rabble of rodents broke into applause. And Greta von Gerbil, without even asking what all of this noisy commotion was masking, just turned on her heel without pausing to bask in the cheers and acclaim of the clamorous crowd. Then Sophie held up the thesaurus and yelled, She's no dilettante, your pique has been quelled. But now let us leave them and follow young Greta, who simply went home without posting her letter, and readied a dinner of cinnamon cheddar. That evening she sat down and took up her pen, then began to revise her epistle again, and had it completed by 10:15. And here's what she wrote. Dear Headmistress Marmot, I hope things are well in the language department. Today I contested a triad of varmints. A gopher, her boss and their guinea pig friend. Each one of these rodents had sat down and penned a rap battle smackdown, a newfangled trend among literate daredevils bored by the hoarding discussions that drive so much local reporting. I must say I found the sport very rewarding, though startled myself when I gave it a crack at how fiercely I parried their verbal attack. Signed Greta von Gerbil, the wee desert rat.